April 2nd, 1945. The shattered outskirts of Essenbach, Germany. The world is mud and thunder. Rain, cold and relentless, slicks the splintered trees and turns the earth of the gun pit into a sucking mire. For 19-year-old Hanna Vogel, a Flakhelferin of the Luftwaffe, this earth is the only thing left to hold on to. She lies flat, her cheek pressed into the cold muck, the vibrations of the earth telling a story her ears can no longer process. The constant concussive boom of their own 88mm flak gun has deafened her to all but the highest-pitched whines and the deepest rumbles. Her universe has shrunk to this metal-ringed hole in the ground, a place that smells of cordite, wet wool, and ozone. Beside her, a man old enough to be her grandfather, a Volkssturm conscript named Klaus with a tremor in his hands, fumbles another high-explosive shell onto the loading tray. His face is a mask of grim determination, his watery blue eyes fixed on the gun's breech. Across the pit, Lieutenant Schmidt, their commander, a man with one good arm and an iron cross from a war fought a generation ago, screams orders that are swallowed by the din. The gun crew is a ghost of a proper unit. 2 teenage girls in ill-fitting gray-blue uniforms, 3 old men, and the one armed officer. They are all that remain of Flak Battery 3. They are Germany's last defense. The rumbles are getting louder. Not the familiar, reassuring roar of their own gun, but a grinding, metallic groan. American tanks. Shermans. Hanna risks a glance over the sandbagged parapet. Through the gray mist and smoke, she sees them. 3 of them, crawling like steel beetles over the rise less than 400 meters away. Their long 76mm cannons are traversing, hunting. Machine gun fire, a sound like tearing canvas, rips through the air above her head, kicking up spurts of mud and showering them with debris. She ducks down, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. You can feel the ground shake with their approach. It feels like the world is coming apart at the seams. "Layden, now!" Schmidt's voice cuts through her fear, raw and desperate. Klaus shoves the shell home. The breech block clangs shut with a heavy, final sound. Hanna's job is the fuse setter. Her fingers, numb with cold, move with practiced speed, twisting the dial on the shell's nose. A 5-second delay. Let it get closer. Let it count. She gives the signal, a sharp tap on Klaus's shoulder. The old man yanks the firing lanyard. The world explodes in a flash of white-hot light and a physical blow of sound that knocks the air from her lungs. The 88mm gun leaps back in its mountings, the massive recoil of violent shudder through the entire pit. Hanna watches the tracer arc out, a searing red line through the rain, impossibly fast. It strikes the lead Sherman, a brilliant spark on its glacis plate. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then a secondary flash. The tank lurches to a stop, a plume of black smoke beginning to billow from its open hatch. A small, savage cheer rises from the old men, a sound that is immediately choked off by a retaliatory storm of fire. The other 2 tanks open up, their cannons flash, and the world dissolves into chaos. A shell screams past, impacting the ruined farmhouse behind them. Brick and timber erupt. The other girl in the crew, a quiet girl from Hamburg named Lise, cries out as a splinter tears through the sleeve of her tunic. It's a shallow wound, but the sight of blood sends a fresh wave of panic through the pit. They are trapped. The American infantry is coming. You can hear their rifles now, the distinct, sharp crack of the M1 Garand, so different from their own Kar 98Ks. They are being enveloped. Lieutenant Schmidt pulls his Luger. His face is pale, but his eyes are burning. "For the fatherland," he rasps, trying to stand. But it's over. A burst of machine gun fire from the surviving Sherman sides across the top of the gun pit. The lieutenant is thrown backward, his chest a ruin of red. Klaus stares, his mouth agape, the firing lanyard slipping from his fingers. The fight has gone out of him. The fight has gone out of all of them. The grinding of tank treads is right on top of them now. A shadow falls over the pit. Hanna looks up into the blunt steel face of an M4 Sherman. It stops, its cannon depressing slowly, deliberately, until it is pointing directly at them. Dark figures are topping into the trenches around them, men in green uniforms and strange netted helmets. GIs. They are yelling, their voices sharp and foreign. Hanna drops the fuse key she was holding. It clatters onto the metal floor. She raises her hands slowly, the cold rain running down her face and mixing with tears she didn't know she was crying. The war, for her, has just ended. A new, more terrifying uncertainty is about to begin. The American soldiers are ghosts in the smoke. They move with an economy of motion, a professional weariness that is more intimidating than overt aggression. One of them, a tall corporal with a face that looks impossibly young under his helmet, waves them out of the gun pit with the barrel of his rifle. Rouse, rouse, let's go. Hands up. The words are harsh, but his tone is not cruel. It is simply exhausted. Hannah stumbles out, her hands held high, her gaze fixed on the mud at her feet. She doesn't dare look them in the eye. All the stories, all the warnings from the propaganda films about the vengeful Americans, the brutal GIs, are a frantic slideshow in her mind. She is herded together with Lise and the other surviving female auxiliary, a signals operator named Greta. The old Volkssturm men are separated, pushed into a different group. The soldiers are thorough, patting them down for weapons with quick, impersonal hands. Hannah flinches when one of them takes the small knife she used for her bread and cheese. He examines it for a moment, then simply tosses it into the mud. They are not interested in souvenirs. They are interested in processing the living and moving on. The sheer number of prisoners is overwhelming them. From other positions, a steady stream of gray-clad figures is emerging from the woods, their hands in the air, their shoulders slumped in defeat. Private First Class Dale Miller, a bar gunner from Canton, Ohio, watches the women. He's 20 years old and has seen enough fighting since Normandy to last 10 lifetimes. He looks at their faces, streaked with dirt and tears, their eyes wide with fear, and he doesn't see the fanatical enemy of the posters back home. He sees girls who look no older than his own sister. One of them, the blonde one, can't be more than 19. He feels a pang of something he can't name. It isn't pity, not exactly. It's a deep, gut-wrenching weariness with the whole ugly business. His squad leader, Sergeant Frank Russo, a tough, stocky man from Brooklyn, claps him on the shoulder. "Keep him moving, Miller. We gotta get him back to the collection point before dark." The march is a surreal ordeal. They are led through the skeletal remains of Essenbach. Buildings stand as hollowed-out husks, their windows like vacant eyes. The air is thick with the smell of wet ashes and death. American jeeps and trucks churn past them, their drivers barely giving the column of prisoners a second glance. This is routine now. The collapse of the Third Reich is happening town by town, surrender by surrender. Hannah keeps her eyes down, focusing on the boots of the woman in front of her. Each step is a step further into an unknown future. The collection point is a former brick factory on the edge of town, a sprawling complex of sheds and warehouses surrounded by a hastily erected barbed wire fence. Hundreds of German prisoners are already there, a sea of gray uniforms sitting in silent, dejected rows in the main yard. The rain has started again, a miserable, persistent drizzle. Hannah, Lise, and Greta, along with about 20 other captured women from various units, nurses, secretaries, other flak helpers, are separated from the main group. They are led towards a long, low wooden hut at the far end of the compound. It looks like it was once a barracks for factory workers. It is now their prison. An American officer with a clipboard checks their names off a list, a task made difficult by the language barrier and the women's own fear. Then the heavy wooden door of the hut is opened. "In," a guard says, gesturing with his rifle. They file inside. The air is immediately close and musty, smelling of damp wood and unwashed bodies. The space is a single large room, perhaps 30 meters long, lined with rough wooden bunks. It is already crowded with other female prisoners. There must be over 100 of them crammed into the space. The last of Hannah's group squeezes in, and the door is slammed shut behind them. A heavy wooden bar is dropped into place on the outside. The sound echoes in the sudden, oppressive silence. They are locked in. As her eyes adjust to the gloom, Hannah sees faces etched with the same fear and uncertainty that she feels. Women whisper to each other in hushed, urgent tones. Rumors fly. They will be shipped to America. They will be sent to Siberia. They will be handed over to the Russians. In the center of the long room stands a single pot-bellied stove, its chimney pipe sneaking up through the ceiling. A small pile of damp wood and coal sits beside it. It offers the only promise of warmth against the encroaching night and the bone-deep chill of defeat. They huddle together on the bunts, strangers bound by a shared uniform and a common terror. Outside, the light begins to fail. The guards are just shadows passing the grimy windows. The world has been reduced to this one dark, overcrowded room. And as the cold deepens, someone makes their way to the stove, intent on starting a small, desperate fire against the dark.
The fire starts as a comfort. A small group of women, their faces illuminated by the flickering match, coaxes the damp wood in the pot-bellied stove to life. For a moment, a fragile sense of normalcy settles over the hut. The growing warmth pushes back the biting cold. The soft orange glow creates an island of light in the oppressive darkness, a place where faces become human again, not just shapes in the gloom. Hannah finds a spot on a lower bunk with Lise and Greta, pulling her thin blanket tight around her shoulders. The heat from the stove feels 100 miles away, but the light is enough. The low murmur of conversation provides a thin defense against the silence of the prison camp. They talk about home, about family, about what might happen tomorrow. No one has answers. But the stove is old, its metal rusted and thin in places. The chimney pipe, poorly fitted and caked with soot, glows a dull, angry red as the fire grows hotter. No one notices. They are too consumed by their own misery and fear. They feed more wood into its belly, desperate for more warmth. Sparks, tiny incandescent embers, escape from a crack in the flue and drift up into the rafters. They are invisible in the smoky air. They land silently on the dry, tinder-like timbers of the roof, nestled in decades of dust and cobwebs. For several minutes they smolder, unseen and undetected. Then a single questing tongue of flame licks up from a roof beam, directly above the stove. It is small at first, no bigger than a candle flame. A woman points. A hushed gasp ripples through the room. The conversation stops. All eyes turn upward. The flame wavers, then strengthens, greedily consuming the ancient, dry wood. It finds a purchase, then another. In seconds, it is no longer a single flame, but a rapidly spreading patch of fire, crackling with a hungry, terrifying sound. Panic is a spark of its own. It ignites instantly. A scream cuts through the hut, high and piercing. The room explodes into chaos. Women surge away from the center of the hut, a wave of bodies crashing against the walls. The fire spreads with impossible speed, leaping from beam to beam. Burning embers rain down, igniting the straw-filled mattresses on the upper bunks. The smoke comes first, thick, black, and acrid. It fills the top of the room and begins to descend like a suffocating blanket. It stings the eyes, seizes the throat, and chokes the air from the lungs. The roar of the fire is a living thing now, a deafening beast that consumes all other sounds. Hannah is thrown from her bunk in the stampede. She scrambles to her feet, her mind reeling. Through the swirling smoke, she sees the barred door. It is their only way out. A mob of terrified women is already there, clawing at the thick wooden planks, beating on it with their bare fists. Their screams are a single, continuous wail of pure terror. "Help us! Open the door! Please, open the door!" But their cries are in German, a language the guards outside do not understand. To Hannah, this is not an accident. This is a trap. This is an execution. The propaganda was true. They were locked in here specifically for this. They were meant to burn. The thought solidifies her fear into a certainty of ice and fire. "See Frau Brennan once," she shrieks, the words torn from her throat. "They're burning us alive." The cry is taken up by others. The terrifying belief spreads as fast as the flames. They are being murdered. This is how it ends, in a locked room, choking on smoke, cooked alive by air enemies. The heat is becoming unbearable, blistering the skin. The air is unbreathable. Women are collapsing, trampled underfoot in the desperate, futile crush to reach the door. Hannah is pushed against the wall, the crush of bodies threatening to break her ribs. The roar of the fire is the sound of the end of the world. Through the inferno, she can hear the frantic shouts of the American guards outside, but they are just noise. In here, there is only one overwhelming, all-consuming thought, screamed from 100 desperate souls. "We'll die in here."
Outside, the first sign is the hellish orange glow that suddenly blossoms against the grimy windows of the hut. Sergeant Frank Russo sees it from 50 yards away and starts running, his M1 rifle held tight in his fists. "Fire! Hut C is on fire!" His voice, honed by the need to be heard over machine guns and artillery, slices through the rainy night. Private Miller and the other two guards at the perimeter fence hear it and turn. They see the smoke, black and oily, pouring from the eaves of the wooden structure. And they hear the sound, a sound that will haunt their sleep for years to come. The high-pitched, collective scream of absolute terror from within. They reach the door just as the first flames begin to lick out from under the roof. The heat is already intense, pushing them back. The heavy wooden bar that secures the door is hot to the touch. "Get it open, now!" Russo yells, throwing his shoulder against the door. It doesn't budge. The wood has swelled from the heat and the rain. Miller and another GI, a farm boy from Iowa named Peterson, put their rifles down and grab the end of the bar. They heave, their boots slipping in the mud. The wood groans in protest. The screams from inside are getting weaker now, replaced by a desperate choking sound. "Put your backs into it," Russo bellows, adding his own weight. The muscles in their backs and arms strain, veins standing out on their necks. With a final, coordinated effort and the sickening crack of splintering wood, the bar rips free from its brackets. The door, pushed from within by the immense pressure of the superheated air, bursts open with a deafening whoosh. A rolling wave of black smoke in incandescent feet washes over them, forcing them to stagger back, shielding their faces. For a second, all they can see is a vision from hell, a swirling vortex of smoke and fire, filled with silhouetted figures collapsing and crawling on the floor. There is no order, no hesitation. There is only instinct. Russo wraps a handkerchief around his nose and mouth and plunges into the doorway. "Grab them! Get them out!" he screams into the inferno. Miller is right behind him. The smoke is a physical entity, a blinding, choking monster that sears his lungs. He can't see more than a foot in front of his face. He stumbles over a body, reaches down, and his hands find the rough wool of a tunic. He gets a grip and pulls. He drags a woman out, her body limp, and deposits her on the wet ground before turning to go back in. Hannah is on the floor, her lungs on fire. The world has dissolved into a roaring red-black haze. Her vision is tunneling. Consciousness is a flickering candle about to be extinguished. She has accepted death. It will be over soon. Then rough hands seize her arm. It's a terrifying, powerful grip. She tries to fight, to scream, but only a pathetic croak escapes her lips. An American soldier. He is dragging her. The last dregs of her strength are fueled by the belief that he is dragging her deeper into the fire to die. But the air is getting cooler. The roaring is slightly less deafening. He is pulling her toward the light. She is hauled out of the doorway and dropped unceremoniously onto the cold, wet grass. She gasps, and her lungs are filled with clean, life-giving air. It's a pain that is also a relief, a violent spasm that brings her back from the edge. She rolls over, coughing up black phlegm, her body shaking uncontrollably. Through watering eyes, she sees the soldier who pulled her out. It's the young one, Miller. His face is black with soot. His eyes are red-rimmed and streaming, but they are wide with a fierce, desperate urgency. He isn't a monster. He isn't an executioner. He turns without a word and runs back into the burning building. The realization hits her with the force of a physical blow, a shock so profound it eclipses the terror of the fire. They weren't trying to kill them, they were trying to save them. One by one, the soldiers of the 29th Infantry Division charge into the blaze, reappearing moments later, dragging and carrying the German women. Russo is the last one out, his uniform smoking, supporting a girl who has fainted. He clears the doorway just as a massive section of the roof collapses inward with a sound like a thunderclap, sending a geyser of sparks and flame into the night sky. Their survivors, German prisoners and American guards, lie scattered on the ground, gasping, coughing, and staring at the funeral pyre that was, moments ago, their prison. The fire illuminates their faces, a tableau of shared shock, primal fear, and a bewildering, impossible gratitude.
The chaos of the fire gives way to the controlled urgency of its aftermath. Medics from the battalion aid station arrive, their jeeps cutting paths of light through the darkness. The air, no longer choked with smoke, is now filled with quiet groans, hacking coughs, and the low, calm voices of the American medics. "Easy now. Just breathe. Let me see those hands." There is no distinction made between friend and foe. A burn is a burn. A lungful of smoke is a lungful of smoke. They move among the dazed women, applying salves to blistered skin and handing out canteens of water. Hannah sits on the damp ground, wrapped in a coarse wool blanket someone has draped over her shoulders. The shaking has subsided, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. She watches as a medic gently cleans a cut on Lisa's forehead. A few feet away, Sergeant Russo is getting a nasty burn on his forearm dressed, wincing but not making a sound. He glances over the scene, his face a grim mask of soot and responsibility, counting heads, both his own men and the prisoners they rescued. His duty was to guard them. It was not, by any military definition, to run into a burning building to save them. Yet he did. They all did. Private Miller sits on the running board of a jeep, his helmet off, head in his hands. A medic offers him a canteen. He takes a long drink, the water cool against his raw throat. He looks up, his gaze sweeping over the huddled group of German women. His eyes meet Hannah's. For a long moment, they just look at each other across the 20 feet of muddy ground that separates victor from vanquished. There is no animosity in his gaze, no triumph, just a profound, shared weariness. In that silent exchange, something fundamental shifts for Hannah. The caricature of the American enemy, a faceless, brutal invader drummed into her head by years of propaganda, dissolves completely. It is replaced by the face of a young man from Ohio, covered in soot, who risked his life to pull her from a fire. You can study the grand strategies of the war, the movements of armies, the decisions of generals. But the war was also fought and experienced in these small, intensely human moments, that defy the vast, impersonal logic of conflict. In this muddy field in the heart of a dying Reich, the rigid lines of hatred and hostility have been blurred by smoke and fire, washed away by an act of simple, shocking decency. For the GIs of the 116th Infantry Regiment, it was a night of unexpected, harrowing duty. For the German women they pulled from the flames, it was the night their entire worldview was shattered, and then rebuilt on a foundation of incomprehensible kindness. As the dawn begins to break, casting a pale gray light over the scene, the fire is little more than a pile of smoldering, steaming embers. The surviving women are gathered and led away to a different, more secure holding area, a brick warehouse that cannot burn. As they walk, Hannah looks back one last time at the American soldiers. Miller is still sitting by the jeep, watching them go. He doesn't smile or wave. He just watches, a solitary figure against the backdrop of the ruin they all survived. The war is not over. Tomorrow he will have to fight again, and the enemy will once more be a faceless entity to be defeated. But tonight, for a few brief, searing hours, the enemy had a face, a name, and a scream for help. And for Hannah Vogel, the world which had ended in fire and terror was incomprehensibly, miraculously, beginning anew.